Thank you so much for joining. We're going to officially get the show on the road. Selena, please may you support me by sharing your screen so I can officially get started. And amazing, lovely to see you all. Hello from Netherlands and South Africa. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you very much. We're super excited. This is an amazing, a big webinar for us today, and we're so excited to be sharing it all and introducing our amazing panelists and having a wonderful topic as we celebrate Indigenous Peoples Month, as well as just celebrate climate action that we're all doing every day, working so hard in our homes and different places where we are. My name is Evie, and I am with Planetarra, and I'm just going to be the host for today's webinar. With me on the call, I have the lovely Selena, who's going to be supporting us. You can see Athena and Carlotta and Roslyn are going to be in the chat boxes. We've got the amazing Patricia, who's running our interpretation in Spanish. So if you're here and it's part of the Spanish-speaking webinar, welcome. We're so excited to have you. And then we have a wonderful Tom who's here today, who's going to be the moderator. And I'm so excited to be introducing our panelists today later on, who are going to be sharing the amazing work around Indigenous people and climate change. So we're so excited as Planetarra and Winter to be having this webinar and sharing all these wonderful news from the field and having these amazing leaders within their communities sharing with us all today so we can learn from them all. And hopefully by the time we reach the end of this webinar, we've learned a thing or two and we've armored ourselves and know what action to take within our individual communities. So thank you very much. Next slide, please. Thank you. So just a little bit of a run through of what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm just going to explain a little bit about who is Planetarra for our new attendees today and share about our Global Community Tourism Network initiative, and then also to share about the World Indigenous Tourism Alliance, also Winter, and our partnership with such an amazing organization. And we're going to have an acknowledgement of land today and also have a chat about the Whadjuk Declaration by our amazing partners at Winter as well, and then officially introduce the Planetarra's Global and Climate and Biodiversity Initiative as well, and meet our speakers and have a conversation where we hear from our communities on what work they're doing around climate action and the different, traditional knowledge and the different customary knowledge that they have been doing for thousands and thousands of years as well. So just a quick introduction on who is Planetarra. If you don't know us already, so Planetarra, we are an impact-driven nonprofit organization that is using tourism to uplift communities. So our efforts, our main focus is to connect communities to the benefits of tourism. And we do this in many different ways. And this is by developing and also supporting, sorry, Selena, I think I've lost the screen there. There we go, thank you. And supporting community-owned enterprises while promoting more responsible travel. We've got over 20, this is our 20th year anniversary this year, so we're super excited. We've got over 15 years in community tourism enterprise development and 100% business success rate when it comes to working with community tourism enterprises. And we're super excited because some of those community tourism enterprises are going to be represented in our panel today. So one of the main things that we do is we're working to see a world where people can create their own economic opportunities, where places are protected and cultures are celebrated through travel. And hopefully today we can do all three in just a space of 2 hours and take you along with us on this ride. Next slide, please. Thank you. If you've been following Planetarra for a while now, you know about our Global Community Tourism Network, which is a large part of why we're having this webinar again today. So our Global Community Tourism Network is an online platform where we are working with communities all over the world to support them with online learning and training, mentorship, as well as to feed through opportunities for them. So what we do in the GCTN, as we call it, is we're supporting communities to achieve achieve their social and environmental goals. And we're breaking down those barriers that are existing in the tourism marketplace. So what we do is we increase capacity through access to training, our online learning hub, and we also connect and network communities between each other. And this today, if you're not part of the GCT, and you're going to be a large part of this today, because our communities take a precedence where they can share amongst each other. And this is what we're going to be doing today, sharing and networking amongst communities. And also we provide more opportunities to make community tourism enterprises market ready. And this is through our Global Community Tourism Fund, as well as potential market connections in the tourism industry. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, Selena. I think it's gone to the website. To give you just a little bit of a look. If ever you want to learn more, you can click on our website and then you'll see more about our Global Community Tourism Network. Oh no.
I think it wants us to really see more about our Global Community Tourism Network. Just a little bit, please.
Hopefully after this call, everyone can go onto the network and can see more for themselves and also learn more about Planetarra. I'm more than honored as well today to be the one who's going to be introducing as well WINTA, our partner, the World Indigenous Tourism Alliance. This was an organization that was founded to create and support an international network of Indigenous individuals and groups that are dedicated to tourism development. And WINTA is committed to developing and implementing strategies for the advancement of Indigenous tourism. They work within the tourism industry in ways that promote partnerships and respect Indigenous tourism, values and knowledge. And a large part of why we are here today is because of WINTA's work. And we're so happy to be partnered up with such an amazing organization that is supporting many, many, many communities, Indigenous communities all over the world, to share their stories and to share their experiences through tourism. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I'm super excited to be introducing one of our key speakers today, who's also coming as part of a recommendation from WINTA. I'm going to be introducing John Barrett. John, thank you so much for joining us today. John is the chairman and founder of the Kapiti Island Nature Tours and Nature Lodge, and it's a Maori family-operated, multi-award-winning tourism business that is located in New Zealand's premier nature reserve. So it's super exciting to have John with us. His business and the family business is strongly focused on developing Wanau, Hapu, and Lui, please forgive me for the pronunciation, members into tourism work that is meaningful financially, culturally, and socially. And John has over 40 years of management and governance experience in a range of private and public organization enterprises, and is currently active as New Zealand representative and founding member of the Leadership Council of WINTA World. So please allow me to welcome John as he gives us an acknowledgement of land today, and also we can take the conversation and get into the nitty-gritty of it all. Welcome, John. Lovely to have you today.
Kia ora, Evie. Thank you for that. Ai ngā mātā waka, e ngā aku rangatira, o tēnā iwi, o tēnā iwi, a tēnā koutou, a tēnā koutou. A kia rātou kua wheturangi tia, o tira, a rātou mā, ka tahi anō ka kapohia e te ringa kaha o Aitua, haere, haere, haere atu rā. A haere ki Hawaii ki nui, Hawaii ki roa, a Hawaii ki pā māmao ki te hono i wairua. A pati hono tātai hono, honga mate ki a rātou. A pati hono tātai hono, tonga ora ki a rātou, a ti hei mauri ora. Evie, in my custom and in my language, at an event like this, we would firstly acknowledge everybody who is here. I acknowledge the waka, the canoes of all tribes in my address and in my acknowledgement. I acknowledge all the peoples, the chiefs, everybody, not just chiefs, everybody. And in our custom, we acknowledge the dead, those who have passed on from your families, from your tribes, from your nations and ours. And in our culture, we say, we we bind the dead with the dead, and we bind us, the living, together as the living to carry on the work that they started. So that's the content of my acknowledgement this morning. It's traditional and it's meaningful. So thank you for the opportunity to do that, and thanks for your warm welcome, Evie.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, John. We really appreciate you acknowledging the land and welcoming all of us all here today officially. So thank you so much. And once again, a welcome to everybody that is still joining and that has been here. It was such a powerful land acknowledgement. And we will continue with our webinar as we go on. Thank you, Selena. Next slide, please. I'm going to hand it back to you, John, as well, to just give us a little bit of an overview of the Whadjuk Declaration and just share with everybody a little bit more about what it is and what it means for the work with Indigenous communities and climate action.
Thanks again, Evie. The Whadjuk Declaration is a document that was born organically, actually, at a conference of the 2023 Indigenous conference held in Perth, Western Australia in March this year. The declaration came about, I don't want to say accidentally, but it was not planned to be a product of the winter conference held in Perth. The Whadjuk Declaration came about organically because everybody at the conference was talking in the same tone and the same language about the issue that was concerning them most at the time. This was March 2023, and this was March 23 immediately after some significant and massive flooding events in the north of Western Australia, tremendous flooding events in Pakistan, other significant weather events in Europe, Africa, Canada, and in our own country in New Zealand. Weather events that we hadn't seen the like of, many of us, in our lifetimes. And although the conference in March was not specifically promulgated around climate change, the tone of the conference very quickly changed to that. And I was presenting actually on Indigenous tourism operations in New Zealand, and I stopped my presentation in midstream, to be honest, and asked a couple of questions of the audience, and there was over 680 delegates at our conference in Perth, representing 23 countries from around the world. And many of those countries were Pacific Island nations who were absolutely at their wits' end and suffering through the impact and effects of climate change on their small island nations particularly. Sea level rise is absolutely causing havoc in the Pacific, and particularly in the South Pacific. And of course, we've seen recently events in Hawaii and the North Pacific as well. So the Whadjuk Declaration, and the key points from the declaration are up there on the slide. The key questions I asked the conference midway through my non-climate change presentation was, should we be making a statement at this conference about the impact of climate change on us as Indigenous tourism operators, Indigenous communities, and Indigenous people? And the unanimous response was, yes, we should be doing something immediately to bring this to the notice of those who aren't noticing. And that's where the Whadjuk Declaration was born, essentially, Evie, and that's how it's come to gather some momentum and is being promoted with various decision makers, governments, national governments, regional governments, tribal groups, whoever has the ears to listen. We're promoting this declaration and the messaging that goes with it. So we hope we hope it's a useful and meaningful tool to help particularly Indigenous tourism operators to help them in their work to ensure the continuity of their cultures, their lands, their languages, and their participation in society. I'll leave it there, Evie.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing that with all of us, John. It's such an incredible declaration. It will be made available for any communities that would love to access it in the Global Community Tourism Network, where you can have a read through of the declaration. And we should also be able to link it to all necessary to all those that would love to have a read as well. It will be available for reading. So thank you very much for that, John. Great, amazing. Moving forward, I'm super excited for us to get going with our panel discussion after such a lovely introduction and also an overview of the Wajik Declaration. It'll be so interesting today for us to have this panel discussion. I will, however, just preface the conversation by saying we are currently running this webinar in both English and Spanish. So we will take a little bit of a short break. It won't be maybe a minute or 2 minute long break, as we have a translator who's also working concurrently with all of us at the moment, translating this whole webinar to our Spanish speaking participants. So just at past, I will just ask us to take a short break for a couple of minutes, just 2 minutes for her to just gather her breath, and then we will continue again. So apologies for any inconveniences that this may cause for anyone who will be viewing today. So moving on, I'm super excited to be welcoming this panel. Our moderator for today is Planetarra's very own Thomas Ahmed. He is Planetarra's Global Manager for Projects and Partnerships, and he has been chosen today as the special moderator today, representing Planetarra because of as he is leading Planetarra's work in our global climate and biodiversity initiative. So he thought himself today would be a good day for him to come and meet our panelists, to learn from our panelists, and get a little bit more knowledge about how he can, support, how you can all support his work, and how we can be the best at our work in climate and biodiversity action, from learning from the original custodians of Mother Nature themselves, the Indigenous communities who are here today. So Tom has built up responsible and sustainable tourism experience over the last 16 years, and he's worked on field-based community and conservation tourism in developing projects. So super excited to introduce Tom. Tom will just give us a quick overview of Planetarra's work in our climate and biodiversity initiative, and Tom will kick off officially the conversation and introduce our panelists, and we will get to hear from all of them today, and all hopefully we can learn from such amazing individuals today. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Evie. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I welcome everyone to this webinar, and thank you so much for the time that you are spending with us to discuss this very important topic. So as Evie has just explained, Planetarra has developed and launched a global initiative called the Planetarra's Climate and Biodiversity Initiative. And the reason why we decided to go into this topic is because of our work that we've been historically doing with our community partners and the impact that climate change is visibly, physically having on our community partners around the world. And we felt that it was within our mandate to support, guide, innovate with our community partners, ways in which our community partners can better adapt, better develop their resilience, better engage with the topic of climate and biodiversity crisis, and develop solutions which work for them and work for the rest of the world. And so we decided to put our heads together and think about how the climate and biodiversity crisis interacts with communities around the world, and especially within the sphere of tourism. And we came up with this simple diagram, which you can see on the right-hand side of the slide there, which shows the interaction between potential climate and biodiversity crisis solutions, communities and tourism, and how by interconnecting these three spheres, we can create resilience within nature, within tourism, and within communities. And we decided that the way that we could be doing that is by focusing on 4 pathways. So we have the regenerate pathway, the educate pathway, the collaborate pathway, and the innovate pathway. Now, the regenerate pathway is all about how can we regenerate biodiversity together. Biodiversity is so important to our planet. It's so important to all of the beings that live on our planet, all the wildlife, all the flora and fauna, of which human beings are a part. Human beings, at some point in time, have not all, but in the large majority, disassociated themselves from nature. And this is something that we need to address very, very quickly, that we need to be able to understand that we are part and parcel of biodiversity across the planet. And by regenerating biodiversity and working in league with Mother Earth, Mother Nature, we as a species will be better off, and we can work in conjunction and collaboration and cooperation with other species of plants and animals on this planet. So we decided to focus on regenerate first and foremost by looking at how we can work with community-led organizations that are regenerating biodiversity. And we started working on a tree growing program that focuses on trees that directly and positively impact communities around the world. But we want to develop this regenerate piece in a way that will encompass other ways, not just tree growing, but other ways that will regenerate biodiversity. The second pathway, educate, we realized very soon when starting to look into climate and biodiversity initiatives and the rhetoric that goes behind it, that the jargon, the vocabulary, the concepts that are used are not inclusive. They're very elitist. They're very one-sided. And dare I say it, they're very global north focused. And so one of the things that we want to focus on is how do we demystify, how do we translate, how do we interpret these concepts of climate and biodiversity crisis and climate and biodiversity crisis solutions so that community partners that we work with can access the knowledge, access the understanding of these concepts and relate them to the context in which they operate, in which they live, so that they can make better decisions or innovate on decisions that they already have in order to be able to address the climate and biodiversity crisis. And we don't know everything. That's the first thing that we should understand. We don't know anything, really. And so the best way to tackle a crisis, to address a crisis, is by opening our arms up to collaborating with people who follow this vision of wanting to rekindle the relationship of humanity to nature. And so we understand and we realize that collaboration is key to this program. Its collaboration is key across the planet, dare I say across the universe, in order to be able to live a more fulfilling and meaningful life. And innovate. Innovation is talked about, or has been talked about, mainly in technology, but innovation in this sense is how do we take ideas, How do we take concepts? How do we take practices that have been developed and practiced for millennia, and how do we adapt them to the modern world? How does the modern world adapt to these practices, and how can we scale them so that the 8 billion people on this planet can practice them? And how can we connect these to community tourism and community tourism enterprises? As you can see from the diagram, we believe that community tourism enterprises can work in close collaboration with climate and biodiversity crisis solutions. And we need to be, we don't have the answer to this. We'd like to work with you guys in your communities to find these ways of innovating these solutions and adapt them within the context of community tourism enterprise development. So this is our climate and biodiversity crisis initiative. Obviously, this is not set in stone. It is, as John Barrett made it important for us to understand, things are organic, and we believe that this will develop organically. And we look forward to seeing how we can develop this organically with your support. So there we go. Next slide, Selena. So I think I'll pass it back to Evie.
Yes, and before we officially meet our panelists, it is 1/2 the hour, and as I did mention earlier, we will be taking a quick 2-minute water break while our translator, who's currently translating for viewers and communities that are attending in Spanish, while she catches her break and also has a sip of water. And once again, I apologize for any inconvenience that this might cause, but I will temporarily just take a break for a moment while we all catch our break, and Patricia, our lovely translator as well, just takes a break. So we'll be back in exactly 2 minutes to continue and meet our panelists and get the conversation going. Thank you all. And while we wait, so just in case we have anyone who has missed it, I would love to hand it over to Selena, if you're able to explain to anyone who's around how they can use the translation mode of this webinar while everyone is taking a break.
Yes, thanks, Evie. I'm just quickly going to stop sharing screen. So I need to see the screen this side. If no one minds, I can do it quickly in Spanish. Maybe that's easier for our Spanish-speaking audience. So if you please allow me. Hola a todos, buen día. Quería un poco explicarles dónde queda la función de interpretación. No sé si nos están conectando desde su teléfono móvil, desde el celular o desde las pantallas, pero en la parte de abajo tenemos 3 botones en donde dice más. Me parece que ahí, si ustedes le hacen clic ahí, deberían ver la opción de escuchar en español. No sé si Carlota me puede corregir, ella que lo pudo activar. No, perdón. En la parte de abajo hay como que un icono de un mundo que dice escuchar audio en español o inglés. Entonces, dependiendo de lo que ustedes necesitan, escogen español, o si quieren volver a escuchar en inglés, escogen inglés. Y si tienen alguna pregunta, si es que no lo llegan a ver, por favor escríbanos en el chat y nos podemos ver juntos. Thank you, Evie. I hope that was
Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much for everyone who's still with us. We'll just take another minute while we wait for our interpreter, and then we will get back into the exciting part of our webinar today, which is the panel. We do have a Q&A box that is open. So once the conversation gets going and you're inspired to ask a question, please do type it in our Q&A box. I will again repeat this once our translator is back, so that our Spanish-speaking colleagues and partners can also ask their questions in the Q&A box. Feel free to ask any questions that you might have. And towards the end of the webinar as well, we will share some links on where you can find our different panelists' work and the communities and where they are. So yes, amazing. So we have our interpreter back. we can continue the webinar now. So welcome once again to everybody. I'll be so excited. Selena, please, if you can, thank you. Super excited for the amazing part, the important part of our webinar today, where we get to have a conversation with amazing leaders from different communities, Indigenous communities in different parts of the world, which is super exciting, and just makes me so excited to be hearing all these different views and all this different advice that we will get today. I can't wait. I simply can't wait. Our different speakers will introduce themselves during the conversation, but for now, please do allow me to welcome Jean, who is the tourism coordinator from Planetares partner, Parc de la Papa. We've got John Barrett, who we've met already, super excited. We've got Mangana, who is part of the Kuru Development Trust in Karkare in Botswana. They're all going to introduce themselves, and I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing any names. And we've also got Paulina, who is the president of Rincon Ecological Cultural in Taraba. So I'm super excited. Tom, I'm going to hand it over again to you, so you can lead this conversation as our wonderful moderator today while we all listen and learn. And yes, thank you so much again for everyone joining. And don't forget to type in any questions in English or in Spanish in the Q&A box. And if we have time in the end, we can ask our wonderful panelists to answer for us. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Evie. Okay, well, here we go for the most exciting part, which is where we talked to our panelists about the role of Indigenous communities and in addressing climate change and community tourism enterprise development. So, first and foremost, we're going to be introducing our panelists. So I'm going to ask each panelist to briefly introduce themselves, as well as their Indigenous community, and also to share their involvement in tourism and environmental and climate issues. So I'm going to start with John Barrett. If you could briefly introduce yourself, John, to the rest of the audience.
Well, thanks, Thomas. Yes, well, my name is John Barrett. I'm a New Zealand Maori person. My confederation of 3 tribes occupies our traditional lands in the North Island of New Zealand. My own family and our own business is situated on a small island, so we're an island family. Our tribe, we have a population of approximately 35,000 members of our tribe spread across our own traditional lands and other parts of New Zealand and the world actually as well. Our family and our extended family operate a successful tourism business on our traditional lands, hosting one of our country's most important nature reserves on Kapiti Island. We introduce visitors and guests to our nature, to our flora, fauna, customs and culture. And personally, I've been involved with my tribal group in a range of positions and activities encompassing social, educational, economic, cultural and environmental over 35, closer to 40 years now. Climate change has forced itself on us as the new COVID in this part of the world, with even more severe and disastrous impact than the COVID pandemic. So that's my introduction, and I'm looking forward to participating more in the question and answer and panelist program. Thanks, Thomas.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you for introducing yourself. So I'm going to ask the same of the other panelists. So maybe we can go on to Jean. Jean, if you could briefly introduce yourself, please.
Hola, hermanos. ¿Me escuchan, hermanos? Sí.
Sí.
Hola. Bien, hermanos y hermanas Muchas gracias por la invitación de la Asociación de Comunidades del Parque La Papa. Hombre, yo soy de la provincia Calca, distrito de Pisaj, que tiene 12 comunidades y parte alta tiene 6 comunidades. Entonces estas comunidades son comunidades hombres andinos que vivimos en los Andes, sobre 4.200 a 300 metros sobre el nivel del mar. Y nosotros en el Parque La Papa somos como guardianes de agrobiodiversidad. Somos guardianes de papas nativas y también estamos trabajando juntamente con el Consejo de La Papa. Son seis comunidades que trabajamos, comunidad Paru Paru, Pampayacta, Chahuaytire, Sacaca, Cuyurán. En estas comunidades actualmente vamos a hablar sobre el cambio climático, mucho sol. El calendario agrícola ya no es como los años anteriores, ha cambiado mucho. Este año no tenemos buena producción de papas nativas, no solamente en papas nativas, también en lo que son cereales. Entonces, justamente como Parque La Papa, estamos trabajando con lo que es conocimiento andino tradicional en el Parque La Papa, de adaptar los productos que tenemos en el Parque La Papa, ¿no? Al cambio climático o resistentes al cambio climático. Entonces, ahí estamos trabajando con el apoyo de Asociación Andes, que nos ha apoyado desde el inicio, ¿no? Y también con el apoyo de Planetarra, que también nos está apoyando, ¿no? Con lo que es turismo, y de esta forma estamos trabajando en el Parque de La Papa. Y pues más adelante hablaremos mucho más, y para mí es un placer de estar con ustedes, de compartir qué está pasando en el mundo, o también no solamente en los pueblos andinos, también cómo va el cambio climático, cómo nos afecta. Entonces, por eso nosotros vamos a hablar sobre el cambio, ¿no? No solamente es en los países grandes, también en los pueblos andinos también está pasando el cambio climático, ¿no? Y para nosotros es como como dijo mi compañero, como segundo COVID, ¿no? Que está pasando a nivel mundo. Y gracias, hermanos. Eso sería mi palabra.
Thank you so much for your introduction, Jean. I will pass now the floor to Mangana. Please, could you introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. Great to Tira Manganara. Mangana is my name. I'm from Botswana in a small village called Dika, a son or Masara, as we are used to be called in Botswana. I'm working for Guru Development Trust, an organization for self-development. This organization is owned by SEN. And as I said, it's an organization for self-development. We are to showcase our traditional knowledge and skill, language, our experience with nature, and in particular, Guru is all about cultural tourism, because we are human beings because of what we are. And as a marginalized community, we thought we have to preserve our culture, promote our language, promote our identity, and showcase that we are not disadvantaged, but skilled and innovative community. In brief, that's what I can say with you.
Many thanks, Mangana. That's a great introduction. Thank you so much. And last but not least, Paulino, could you please introduce yourself?
Hola, buenos días. ¿Qué tal? ¿Cómo están todos? Mi nombre es Paulino del territorio indígena de Terra. Estamos al sur de del país de Costa Rica. Somos un pueblo diezmado, nos interfirió nuestro pueblo una ruta interamericana o panamericana que venía desde de México hasta Panamá desde hace muchísimos años, y esto pues causó mucho impacto en todo nuestro entorno indígena. Pero no por eso quizás nos tiramos ahí a morir cuando ya casi el pueblo se daba por terminado en los años 80. Nace una generación de chicos y chicas y que emprendimos un trabajo. Hace ya más de 50 años casi de venir en una lucha constante. Llegamos a un tiempo donde nacimos con muchas cosas, con aguas limpias, ríos limpios, montañas, viendo animales, viendo la tierra producir, pero también la vimos desaparecer, todas esas cosas. Llegamos a un punto en el cual iniciamos un proceso. Y entonces mi familia decidió hacer un cambio en esto, y pues iniciamos ese proceso de que fue investigar, trabajar para buscar nuevamente nuestra identidad como pueblo originario. Hoy, y después de 40 años, después de haber cambiado nuestras actividades agrícolas y también la parte de ganado, logramos sembrar árboles. Y aunque fue una etapa muy difícil, porque para ese momento en Costa Rica era prácticamente loco, no importaba ser loco, seguimos esa locura de niños. Y fue un proceso, realmente un proceso largo, que esto pues ya algunos mayores y algunas mayoras mujeres pues ya lo hablaban, perdón, sobre la situación que venía en los años venideros. Nosotros no lo entendíamos porque éramos quizás muy jóvenes, muy chicos, y ellos nos hablaban de que iba a haber escasez de agua, iba a haber escasez de oxígeno, de aire, decían ellos, de comida. Pero nosotros fuimos a la escuela y nos enseñaron que habían recursos inagotables. Y entonces en un momento pensamos que nuestras abuelas, nuestros abuelos estaban pues locos, o no tenían mucho estudio, o no sabían leer y escribir. Entonces esto nos causó pues un momento de incertidumbre, pero fue en los 80 que nos dimos cuenta que los abuelos tenían razón, que las abuelas tenían razón, y fue donde iniciamos ese proceso de cambiar esa actividad. Para el año 2000 iniciamos ya cuando el bosque había crecido, después de haber plantado 37,000 árboles de especies nativas, más otra cantidad de frutales que sirvieran de alimento para los animales, pues entonces iniciamos un proceso, perdón, con turismo. Y eso nos trajo una rehabilitación a nuestra comunidad indígena, realmente a nosotros como familia, a la comunidad y al pueblo en general. Hoy Terra vuelve otra vez a disfrutar nuevamente de su cultura, de su identidad, de su tradición, de sus leyendas, de sus mitos, inclusive que eran muchos mitos, hoy los recuperamos. Hoy trabajamos y trabajo con el Consejo de Mayores Brorán, que fundamos a través del tiempo. Voy a estar hablando un poco más sobre cuáles son esas luchas que hemos hecho. Creo que nosotros lo iniciamos en un proceso de tiempo para enfrentar el hoy cambio climático. Creo que nos adelantamos pero un poquito. Creo que falta mucho trabajo que hacer, pero no está perdido. Invitarlos a realmente agradecerle a Planetarra por esta bonita oportunidad de poder compartir con todos y todas. Y hoy a través del turismo podemos también sembrar semillas que huelen a través del mundo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Paulino. Thank you to all of the panelists for their introductions. And I'm seeing a lot of personal stories, a lot of personal approaches, but also some very global challenges that connect your individual communities. And it truly shows the global nature of the climate and biodiversity crisis. But I think one of the things that I get out of these introductions is a message of hope, a message that the communities, your families and your communities are working diligently and actively to support your communities to adapt and to tackle and to become resilient to the actions, the impacts of climate change, and that is something that we'd like to explore more during this discussion. So without further ado, I'm going to move on to the first questions. And we're going to touch on the subject of traditional ecological knowledge. So my first question is going to go to Mangana. So Mangana, how does your Indigenous community define its relationship with the environment and nature?
Thank you for the question. It's a very important question. Let me answer that one maybe very briefly from the book of Genesis, where it says God creates a human being to live with the creatures that he has created. And he began with creating the earth and the heaven, light and dark, rainfall, groundwater, vegetation with a variety of visitations, living creatures. And then lastly, he created a human being to take care of the nature and live with it. So it's a bond between, nature is the bond between a human being and that which has been a bond that has been created by God. So a human being has the skill to live with nature, and the nature survives from the human being. This is the bond that we have. So as Indigenous people, in our tourism, we have cultural tourism where we actually showcase our experience with culture, with nature, and knowledge and skill, traditional, that how we handle the nature, both conservation and living with it. And so it's part of us, though we are let down by not being part of decision making. we could have policies that really be helpful for us because we have the skill and the knowledge. I think, if not very clear, I think I've answered your question.
Thank you so much, Mangana. And we'll touch on the aspect of policies later on in the discussion. But a super important topic to discuss, and we won't miss it. So thank you so much. Great. Now I'm going to pass on to Paulino. So Paulino, what aspects of your traditional ecological knowledge are relevant to understanding climate change?
Creo que el conocimiento tradicional es la suma de todo para enfrentar esto, porque nuestros antepasados, nuestros pueblos vivieron por miles de años sin desgastar nuestro planeta. Realmente todos podían convivir, sabiendo de que somos una especie más de este globo. No somos más inteligentes ni menos inteligentes que todos los demás que nos rodean. Simple y sencillamente que nosotros no entendemos su léxico, no entendemos sus palabras y por eso nos hemos creído superdotados. Nos hemos creído que somos todo y que podemos dominar a todos los seres demás. Y todo lo que no me gusta, lo elimino. Solo dejo lo que a mí me interesa. La sobreexplotación que hoy se ha hecho indiscriminadamente por nosotros los seres humanos es que hemos puesto en riesgo y estamos al filo de una navaja que a todos ya en este momento donde estamos no nos salvamos. Entonces, por más inteligencia que haya usado el hombre, no puede superar la parte natural. Jamás. Muestra de eso está cuando se ponen muros a orillas del mar. Se roba espacios al mar. Se ponen creando grandes edificios. Pero es un tiempo. Solo es un tiempo. Porque el mar o la naturaleza misma nos tiene dictado hasta dónde son sus límites. El planeta nos deja hacer lo que nosotros pensamos, algunas cosas desarrollar, pero nunca vamos a poder. Entonces, creo que el conocimiento tradicional es únicamente detenerse, mirar nuestro entorno y ver cómo aquella pequeña planta nace de una semilla, pero con el paso crece una de tantas y se convierte en un enorme árbol. O una pequeña planta que al final de cuentas es eso, la bella creación total de la naturaleza en sí, fijada, como el gran y gran pequeño animal o insecto es importante como la ballena más grande de este océano, o el gran elefante que habita nuestro planeta. Digamos, todos somos una cadena, pero solo cuando seamos humildes de aceptar esa naturaleza y observar, y no está largo, simple y sencillamente está a nuestros pies, está ahí tan cerca que la podemos tocar, pero que muchas veces no queremos porque creemos que somos muy inteligentes.
Thank you, Paulino. That answer really resonates with me, and I think it resonates with a lot of people on this discussion. So thank you so much for sharing that. I think, Evie, we need to take a 2-minute break. Is that so?
Yes, we've hit almost the 30-minute mark. We're going to take a few minutes break so that the lovely Patricia can also take a break from translating and refresh as well. So thank you for that. We'll just stop for another 2 minutes if anyone would like to get a cup of water. We still have an hour to go into our discussion, so we'll take this time to allow Patricia to take a break. And while she's doing that, I will remain with the English community and just English speaking and English understanding participants, and just show you how to access the English translation portion. Thank you. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Just in case you haven't been able to access the English translation when Paulino and Jean are speaking, at the bottom of your screen, there should be an icon that looks like a world, a globe. And in that icon, you can click on it and it will ask you to listen in either original, English or Spanish. You can just click in English. So if you click next to English, there should be a little check next to English, and that will allow you to listen to Patricia's or our interpreters' interpretation when our other panelists are speaking in Spanish. So just in case you may have missed that. Lovely messages coming through the chat box while we wait. We're taking 2 minutes, like I mentioned before. We've had such a lovely answers. I see Andrea saying we are one more species, an important message that needs to be repeated for sure. Absolutely, that is very true. Well, thank you again while we wait for Patricia. It's such a lovely conversation. Something that resonated with me just now was when Paulino said the elephant or the whale is no more important than the smallest insect. And I think for me, that is one of the key takeaways I'm going to go away with today. That is amazing. Please feel free to keep writing in the chat box if you have any questions. Our Q&A is open. Please feel free to type in any questions that you might have. For anyone who's been joining us as we continue, welcome. We're having such a lovely conversation today. And yes, now we have our lovely interpreter back now. I'm going to hand it back to Tom so we can continue the conversation and hear more from our panelists. Tom, thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Evie. Right, so let's dig deeper and ask some more questions to our panelists. So the next topic that we're going to be covering is that of climate change impacts. And in the introduction of our esteemed panelists, a lot of those impacts were mentioned as the reason for the solutions that their individual communities have come up with in order to be able to better adapt and become resilient to these climate change impacts. And one thing that I really was interested in is how these initiatives were also supported by tourism initiatives as a way of supporting the climate change impact mitigation solutions. So I'm going to start with Jean, and I'm going to ask this question, Jean. What specific changes in weather patterns, landscapes, or ecosystems have you observed in your indigenous territory? And how are these changes affecting your community's way of life? I don't know if Jean, did you hear that question?
Buenos días, no le escuché bien porque se me cortó la señal.
Okay. I will ask that question again, Jean, and hopefully your internet will be better.
Ya, por favor.
So the question is about the changes in weather patterns and landscapes or ecosystems that you have observed in your indigenous territory. If you could speak to that, and then if you could also share with our audience how these changes are affecting your community's way of life.
Bueno, hermano, sí, realmente aquí en el Parque La Papa, estos últimos años, desde 2020, claro que desde 2000 no se ha visto los cambios climáticos bastante en las comunidades. Y mayormente nosotros como Parque La Papa, como le comentaba, estamos trabajando de poder conservar, preservar las diversidades que tenemos en el Parque La Papa. Por ejemplo, el cambio climático que nos ha afectado bastante es en lo que son las lluvias, las heladas, las granizadas, no a su tiempo, ¿no? No es de acuerdo del calendario agrícola, sino es totalmente el cambio ha cambiado bastante, ¿no? Entonces, si ha habido esos cambios climáticos bastante aquí en el Parque La Papa, entonces nosotros hemos estado conectando con la madre tierra, con la naturaleza y con los sabios andinos, ¿no? Para poder sembrar de mejor manera y actualmente nosotros valoramos más el sabios, a los sabios andinos, el conocimiento andino tradicional para cambiar el sistema de lo que son cultivos, ¿no? No el calendario agrícola, sino respetar a los animales, ¿no? Que tenemos los indicadores biológicos, los indicadores atmosféricos, astronómicos, de poder concientizar a los hermanos que viven en el Parque La Papa también, en diferentes lugares, ¿no? Sabemos que el Parque La Papa muchos años atrás era pues una comunidad indígena y sigue siendo indígena, pero actualmente que hay muchas religiones, congregaciones, un poquito está perdiéndose lo que son conocimientos andinos tradicionales. Pero el Parque La Papa, con esta organización del Parque La Papa, seguimos valorando, eh, seguimos teniendo ese conocimiento de poder sembrar, de poder trabajar con el conocimiento andino tradicional en el Parque La Papa. Y es por eso actualmente nosotros estamos dando unos pequeños consentimientos a los hermanos en el Parque La Papa, ¿no? De poder valorar, revalorar el costumbre, nuestra cultura, nuestra identidad en el Parque La Papa. Entonces, así estamos trabajando en el Parque La Papa. Y también lo que es el cambio climático, sí estamos ya adaptando las papas, ¿no? Las variedades de papas que tenemos al cambio climático resistentes, ¿no? Actualmente hemos identificado más de 10, 5, 6 variedades de papas que son cambios climáticos que resisten, ¿no? A la helada, a la granizada, ¿no? Entonces, es por eso nosotros seguimos trabajando con todos en equipo, en unido, porque el Parque La Papa es una organización grande, ¿no? De comunidades que trabajamos. Y y no solamente eso, ¿no? El Parque La Papa también, comentarte que gracias a las organizaciones, a los hermanos que nos apoyaron bastante, por el cambio climático hemos estado guardando las semillas, no solamente en tubérculo, estamos guardando en las semillas botánicas, ¿no? De la valla de la papa. Entonces, gracias al apoyo de la Asociación Andes, hemos obtenido 750 semillas botánicas, ¿no? Que está depositado en el Banco Mundial de Svalbard, Noriega, ¿no? Ahí hemos depositado por el cambio climático y también para la futura generación que viene, para la alimentación. No solamente queremos trabajar en lo que es 750 variedades de papas, semillas botánicas, si no queremos obtener más semillas, ¿no? Y justamente para eso, para trabajar no solamente en la papa, en otros productos necesitamos, ¿no? El apoyo de diferentes hermanos para poder obtener las semillas, ¿no? Y así tener nuestra alimentación, así poder conservar, preservar lo que tenemos en el Parque La Papa. Nada más que comentarte, hermano, y actualmente por el cambio climático también estamos queriendo implementar en cada comunidad fitotoldos, ¿no? Que para poder conservar la semilla, porque si nosotros trabajamos todo en lo que es en los cultivos que tenemos o en nuestras parcelas de chacra, no, tal vez una temporada va a haber mal año, buen año, entonces vamos a perder las diversidades que tenemos. Por eso el Parque La Papa ha implementado con el Banco de la Semilla, no es el banco de dinero, sino de semillas, porque para nosotros es muy importante las semillas, ¿no? De poder conservar, preservar. Si algún agricultor pierde las semillas, ahí tenemos la preserva, la reserva del Parque La Papa. Entonces, así estamos trabajando en cada comunidad en fitotoldos, ¿no? Para poder conservar las variedades de papa. Y también estamos más y más conectando con nuestra Madre Tierra, con nuestro Pachamama, de poder dar un agradecimiento. Y este mes de agosto para nosotros es una temporada muy importante que la Madre Tierra necesita comer, beber, ¿no? Que trabajamos, ¿no? Entonces, a primeros de agosto hemos empezado a dar nuestros productos de lo mejor, ¿no? A nuestra Madre Tierra. Y también, claro, el hombre andino siempre veía lo que son los cabañuelos, ¿no? De a primeros de agosto, pero vemos este año los cabañuelos no coinciden nada, ¿no? No hay, prácticamente para el año que viene no vamos a tener buena producción, ¿no? De todos los productos que trabajamos. Entonces es por eso nosotros, justamente estos meses, estamos en un mes de reflexión, un mes de agradecer a nuestro Pachamamita. Y nada más, hermanos, lo que es el trabajo de la agricultura, seguimos trabajando, seguimos adaptando con este cambio climático de poder adaptar, ¿no? El trabajo de lo que son las agriculturas. Gracias, hermano, y ya hablaremos más adelante.
Thank you so much, Jean. That was very enlightening, and I really like the actual down-to-earth approach to adapting to climate change impacts. And I really enjoyed the analogy of, it is not a money bank, it's a seed bank, and that shows the importance of working with nature compared to the money-driven society that we're currently living in, and actually changing that perspective to putting nature first is super important. So thanks so much, Jean. So on the same topic of climate change impacts, I want to go back to Mangana. So Mangana, are there any particular plants, animals, or natural resources that are important to your culture and livelihoods that are now at risk due to climate change?
Yes. We send people, we have animals that we respect in our tradition. Animals like eland. Just recently, we were having a customary session where traditional healers were supposed to be coming together, and in that particular event, what they needed was the eland. An eland, we call it dew. This is the most respected animal, I think, in our society. So in ceremonies, they use its fats for their spiritual work. So these animals, there are certain trees or bushes that they need to live around and survive with, and they normally walk a long distance, and they more like cattle. They more especially, yeah, because they live from grass as well, and they have certain trees that they need to survive from, which if not there, their life is in danger. More especially in our case where we are keeping them in a farm for tourism purposes. And they should have those species. And if they are not there, it's more like we are threatening their life as well. And nature in general, we survive from the nature differently. There are roots that are seasonal, and every season they should be there. And we are certain that every season, when it's winter, we should get the nuts. And when it's summer, we should get the wild fruits. And when it's winter, the most respectable season in our society. We said it's that's when we say we normally there's no hunger, because there's no hunger. We can hunt. We can go out for the nuts, ground nuts, and when we have good rainfalls, then we have stored water to survive during that period. And when it's cold, we normally, because we don't have the fridges, that the modern fridges, we survive from the cold. That's nature. And if then, because of climate change, we no longer have such winters, which sometimes we see water frozen, which we now don't see, and it has an impact in it. And some animals, they survive better when it's winter, and that's where we can kill maybe a big animal like an eland, because we don't want it meat to be rotten because of some seasons. And these things, they are now no longer. Everything is unexpected, and life then becomes difficult as well.
Thank you so much for that answer, Mangana. And I see from both answers, there is this aspect of uncertainty which presents itself as a result of the climate change impacts. And this really causes challenges when trying to practice traditional and indigenous practices, which have been going on for millennia. And because of this uncertainty, it is difficult to predict the weather patterns, and that will severely affect the way of life. So thank you so much. And we've talked now about the climate change impacts, which is really, it's something that we really need to talk about. But I think what is also important is how we can mitigate and adapt to these climate change impacts. So we're going to move on to the next topic, which is about mitigation and adaptation strategies. I've got two questions here, one for Paulino and one for John Barrett. So the first one is to Paulino. So Paulino, could you share examples of traditional practices or innovative approaches your community is employing to mitigate the effects of climate change or adapt to its impacts?
Hola, sí, creo que gracias. Creo que lo que ya nos dimos cuenta, cómo está impactando estos tiempos a lo nuestro, ¿no? A nuestro planeta, en todos los espacios. Grandes lluvias por sectores, sequías en otros lados extremos. Bueno, la parte norte y sur de los árticos derritiéndose, eso causa pues impactos a otros sectores, porque esta agua se acumula en otros sectores. Pero especialmente lo hemos visto acá en nuestra tierra, en nuestras formas de vida, es también la alteración a las floraciones de los árboles. Los árboles ya no florean. En Costa Rica tenemos dos estaciones muy definidas, que es verano e invierno. Entonces muchos pues, es decir, la población agrícola realmente se basa en esos términos. Hoy ya ha tenido que estar luchando con estas dos situaciones. Para ahora tuvimos sequías. Estamos en etapa de invierno, pero hemos tenido muy reciente, muy poca lluvia. Entonces la gente casi que no pudo ni plantar. ¿Qué hemos hecho nosotros? Bueno, que habíamos abandonado mucho. Era la creación de los chagüites. El chagüite es una zona perimetral de la comunidad, de cada casa de nuestros pobladores, donde en un momento se había activado o se había cortado todo lo que eran frutales y todo eso para darle paso a la ganadería, a otro tipo de cultivos que no eran propios de nosotros. Lo que se hizo fue traerse nuevamente esa práctica ya desde los años 80 hasta hoy. Entonces hoy vemos una comunidad indígena donde hay un bosque, pero un bosque de frutales, que no están produciendo la cantidad que deberían de producir, pero al fin están produciendo. Tenemos cosechas durante todos los 12 meses del año de diferentes productos. También otra de las prácticas importantes es que también bajar del cultivo en gran escala a cultivos muy bajos, a poca cantidad, digamos, casi que de subsistencia. Eso nos permite tener espacio también donde tenemos bosques, y al bosque le asociamos también los cultivos propios de nosotros, digamos, los que también en un momento se habían ido abandonando. Integramos esos productos al bosque. Entonces tenemos un bosque con frutales, tenemos árboles maderables con frutales, pero adicional a eso también tenemos árboles que también producen semillas comestibles, tanto para los animales como para nosotros. También tenemos la otra parte es que al construir el bosque, también el bosque nos nutre de alimentos, como son los hongos, como son las palmeras, como son algunas especies de plantas, ¿no? Y esto hace que realmente se minimice ese impacto de situaciones difíciles para las hambrunas, ¿no? La producción de gallinas, también en el patio, cuidar las gallinas, cuidar un cerdo, cuidar una vaca, o máximos una cantidad de vaca prudencial. Entonces, eso hace también que haya espacio para todos. Así que ya volvimos otra vez, inclusive a esta altura, a retomar que volvieran especies que se habían ido ya del pueblo, como eran los animales del bosque, que muchas especies ya de un tamaño regular ya no habían, no tenían donde vivir. Ahora con este proceso volvemos otra vez a traerlos hasta nosotros. Vuelven a estar acá. Y ahora pues con el cuidado de que la gente se admira y los disfruta, no era como antes, que era para cazarlos o para hacerles daño, sino hoy aprendiendo que todos tenemos un espacio acá, que todos somos importantes, y que hay que seguir haciendo trabajo. Claro que sí, hay que seguir haciendo trabajo. Hay que seguir. Otra de las cosas importantes es que cuando nos adelantamos a plantar el bosque hace muchísimos años, hoy estamos teniendo una producción de oxígeno muy importante para el planeta. Hoy estamos liberando una enorme cantidad de oxígeno al planeta, y también el dióxido de carbono también lo estamos atrapando. Recientemente, hace más de 8 días, el domingo anterior, tuvimos acá una de esas aguaceros que están haciendo estragos en el planeta. Y es una duración tan corta, pero que hace impacto. Y pudimos ver cómo crecieron los ríos. Podemos hacer una medición más o menos que hacía 30 años no teníamos una lluvia de esa cantidad en 40 minutos, que subieron los caudales de los ríos enormes, pero cómo jugaron el papel el bosque. Y fui al bosque a verlo, y son filtros realmente, son presas de hojas, de raíces que habían en el bosque, que esto permeaba únicamente. El agua pasó cayendo directamente a los ríos, pero sin esta cantidad de sedimentos que sí los produce cuando tenés monocultivos en extensión, o ganado en extensión, o cualquier otro cultivo cuando estás destrozando la tierra. Esto me impactó muchísimo a mí, porque que pude ver cómo realmente nosotros podemos hacer cambios. Realmente son 45 años de nuestro trabajo que hemos realizado como proyecto, como Rincón Ecológico Cultural Terro. Pero ¿cómo puedes ver también esta situación que realmente contribuye y fortalece todo este tema? Y bueno, es ahí donde la esperanza está puesta, en que trabajamos en vía de esto. Socializamos a la comunidad aceptó ese reto con nosotros, y hoy esta comunidad Brorán, comunidad Terraba, está prácticamente custodiada. Cuando vienen ciclos de ventoleros, que también hubieron fuertes vientos en ese día, vimos cómo los árboles nos guardaban nuestras casas, cómo quebraban sus ramas el viento, pero el viento no penetró para que golpeara nuestras casas. Entonces, todo eso, wow, realmente es fundamental ese trabajo, y realmente poderlo ver todavía a estas alturas.
Thank you so much, Paulina, for sharing that with us. Really, really insightful information for everyone. So thank you. I'm going to ask one question to John first, and then we'll have a quick break. So we're going to move on to the challenges and opportunities here. So John, are there opportunities for collaboration between Indigenous communities and other stakeholders to tackle climate change?
Well, firstly, Thomas, I just want to make a comment on some of the other presentations, if I can, just to say how tremendously interesting it is to hear these comments and hear these stories, and just understand the commonality within those stories and within those narratives. That's exactly the commonality that led to the creation of Winter, actually. Just knowing that we all share the same issues, the same problems, and at the time we established Winter, there seemed to be no way, no resolution, or no space for resolution of these issues. So it's, and on one hand, it's terrific to hear these issues being discussed. On the other hand, it's really disappointing to hear that some of these issues are still issues and not being addressed adequately. But and so I'm just really grateful to hear these discussions today. It's really, really useful. But to go back to your question, there are absolutely opportunities for collaboration, and I believe that an ability and a willingness to collaborate in this area of climate change is absolutely crucial to Indigenous communities doing the best they possibly can for their communities. We all know a little bit. None of us know everything, but I think it's really important if there is a capability for us to share what we know that is useful to other Indigenous communities. And it won't be easy, because we're all different, and the differences are becoming apparent through our discussion here today. But there are some fundamental similarities that definitely encourage me to say, yes, there is absolutely more opportunity now than ever for us to collaborate as Indigenous communities, particularly in this area of climate change.
Great. Thanks so much, John. I totally agree. And I think that, like you said, this is the time, this is the opportunity, this is the moment for Indigenous communities around the world to come together and discuss, collaborate, work together to look at how this global crisis can be addressed and responded to with all this amazing Indigenous knowledge and ancestral knowledge that frankly has been ignored for many years, too long. And now is the time for that knowledge to be given a voice, given I wouldn't say that a platform, so that the world can understand that Indigenous communities are very much part of the answer and the solution to this global crisis. So thank you so much, John. I think we're going to have a quick break now, Evie, to give our interpreter a bit of time to breathe. And then I'll come back to you, John, with a question about climate justice and advocacy.
Great. Thank you, Tom. Yep. Hi, everyone. Once again, we're going to take a 2-minute break. If you'd like to get some water, just to stand up and stretch a little bit while we let our lovely interpreter just catch a break again and have a sip of water. But what a lovely conversation we're having. I'm super excited how I wish we had the whole day. I wish we had the whole day to be listening to our wonderful panelists share all the amazing experiences and the amazing work that they're doing. Thank you. Just checking in with everybody that we're still here, just taking a bit of a break while our lovely interpreter is catching her a breath and having a sip of water. And then we will officially start the last 30 minutes of our webinar. So sad that we only have 30 minutes left, but hopefully we can do another one next year or so where we can have the whole day, maybe, Tom?
Oh, that would be amazing if we could do even an in-person conference to discuss all of this. But yeah, we obviously we need to take into consideration the carbon impact of that, and we have the tools to be able to have less impact on the globe and get together. So yeah, maybe we can do a whole day event. That would be really good. But again, you know, we can keep the discussions going off this webinar and you know, start conversing between the audience members and the panelists to see how we can work together to take this knowledge to scale and make it more available across the planet to Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities. Yep,
amazing. Thanks, Tom. Well, our lovely interpreter is back and we are officially in our last stretch of our panel. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Tom. And yes, thank you everyone for sticking with us.
Many thanks, Evie, and many thanks to our panelists, and thank you to the audience that has stuck with us right now. And thanks so much to Patricia, our interpreter, for the amazing work that you are doing. Okay, so let's jump back in. We've talked a lot about the challenges and opportunities and the mitigation and adaptation strategies to climate change impacts. But now I want to get into the topic of climate justice and advocacy. So I have a question for you, John, to make the difference between the two Johns that we have. This is for John Barrett. So Indigenous communities are often faced with disproportionate impacts from climate change. How can international climate policies and agreements better recognize and address these disparities?
That's that's a great and important question, but the answer is not quite so simple, I don't think. It's a very difficult question to answer accurately and fully. And you're quite right. You know, here in the Pacific, we sometimes get the feeling that those of us who are doing not very much in terms of creating some of the climate change engines are suffering the most. Some of the small island nations are disappearing while we watch. So you're quite right. It's a disproportionate impact. But I think that we can work with our own jurisdictions, with our own local governments, with our own regional governments. But I think there is the key opportunity for us as Indigenous communities is to approach this with the combined strength that we can all provide collectively. Small voices in a big world sometimes find it difficult to get messaging through. There are some fantastic advocates for Indigenous tourism around the world. Winter would like to do more. I'm sure Planetarra would like to do more. And there are others. There are others who feel that this is and rightly feel that this is the issue of our time. And we don't have time to lose and spend too much time developing policy. The policy writing has taken too long. The time's here now for action rather than too much policy. But the action has to be, in my view anyway, collective, and it has to be strong, and it has to be effective. And again, I'll say it again, a collective approach by good advocates to bodies that can make a difference, the UN, WTO, and others who have influence, is where we could be going. It is a very difficult job. I'm involved in it here in New Zealand, and you know we're competing against the take more not less loop, and you know that's history now. We just can't continue in that with that model. That model has to be discarded, and you know we're now, in my view anyway, we're in a model where less is more. And that's where we could be heading, and I'm sure that's the way Indigenous communities will want us to look. But it's a long roundabout answer, I know, Thomas, but it's that way because it's such a difficult answer, a difficult question. But I'm convinced that, and I've seen through Winter's work the effect and the impact of a collective approach. So that's why I put some hope.
Totally, absolutely. And you can see the power of collectivism in nature as well.
Absolutely.
Creating oceans are created by many different drops of water, and they have the power to mold and create new landscapes just by being together as one. And by taking the example of nature, I believe, and I see that reflected through our conversations, that by being as one, that's where the change can be created. So thanks so much, John, for your answer and your insights. So we're going to move quickly and swiftly on to our next topic, which is the interconnectedness of issues. Probably another very difficult question to answer. And I'm sorry in advance, Paulino, to ask you this question that is very loaded and probably will require hours of response and discussion, but I'll try and let's try and answer it anyway. So climate change, Paulino, is interconnected with social, economic, and cultural aspects. In your opinion, how does climate change intertwine with other challenges your community faces, such as cultural preservation and social equity?
Como dices, sí, es una pregunta bien grande, bien amplia, pero bueno, vamos a intentar responderla. Sí, creo que la interacción, dice que cuando la fuerza es más grande que tú, únetele a ella para enrumbar su camino, para dónde quieres ir. En este momento tenemos una verdad puesta ahí, la tenemos al frente de nuestros ojos, que ya se hace muy difícil. Si te paras por delante, te arrasas, te termina y simple y sencillamente quedas con un montón de preguntas sin respuesta, y posiblemente en shock. Y yo creo que nuestro pequeño trabajo se basa en que el sumar es importante. Y cuando digo el sumar es importante es porque nuestro trabajo ha sido en los últimos años con la juventud, la niñez, y especialmente abordando que los niños y la juventud pueda ver lo que se puede hacer a favor de la naturaleza, a favor de todo. Entonces, nos ha tocado pues trabajar con esa niñez que será el que no sabemos, futuro incierto, pero que está ahí. Pero qué lindo es realmente ver a esos chicos sonreír, eh, eh, entusiasmados, y que puedas contarle cómo se construyó todo una pequeña parte de todo esto. Pero también cómo los pones a ellos de frente a esto, sin comprometerlos, que sea una carga para ellos. Hoy cuando trabajamos con chicos y chicas de muchos países que nos visitaban antes de la pandemia, ahora ya volvimos a retomar programas de voluntariado. Cuando se habla de venir a hacer trabajo de voluntariado, ellos siempre vienen corriendo, siempre vienen con la esperanza de plantar un árbol, emocionados porque van a hacer ese cambio. Hoy ya nuestro espacio está lleno de plantas. Entonces, cuando llegan, la sorpresa es que los ponemos a ver el bosque, a ver los animales, a ver las cosas, a ver la naturaleza en su totalidad y darles una esperanza. Pero más que una esperanza, también una educación sobre temas como el consumismo, que es lo que más ha golpeado todo esto y lo que más nos ha dañado. Y quizás hablarlo con términos sencillos, diciéndole a un chico que viene de las grandes ciudades de Europa o del norte o de otras partes de países muy fuertes, que se crecen en grandes ciudades sin saber cómo se produce el agua, sin saber cómo se genera el aire, el oxígeno, sin saber cómo es la tierra donde se generan algunos cultivos que son comida diaria, y empezar a hablar con ellos y los desperdicios que hay, más el consumismo que nos han hecho llegar. Y que muchas veces no es malo tener un carro, pero 20 sobrepasa. O tener exorbitantes cosas que el cuerpo no necesita, como es la misma ropa que utilizamos, que se gastan millones de millones, pero se consumen cantidades de cosas que muchas veces vienen a contaminar nuestros lugares, nuestras zonas. Y quizás eso muchas veces no lo pensamos, ¿no? Porque pensamos en cuidar el ambiente, cuidar de tal cosa, plantar un árbol, pero se nos olvida la parte primordial, que es la vivencia propia. Cuando consumimos grandes cantidades de carne, especialmente no estoy nada en contra de los que producen un poco de res, por la leche y por todo eso es muy buena, pero también cuando es en monocultivo enorme, que son miles de actos, lo que estamos comentando es destrucción. Entonces, ¿cómo hacer eso? ¿Cómo volcar a los chicos, a las chicas a esto? ¿Cómo hablar con ellos de cara a lo que estamos ya, pero a lo que viene también? Entonces, ¿cómo prepararlo? Entonces, esa interacción vista de la parte cultural nuestra a la parte abierta, mundial, y decirles a un chico, ya no vas a plantar un árbol, no lo vamos a plantar en el suelo, porque la naturaleza nos dice que todos somos aspersores de semillas. Entonces, plantamos árboles en tu corazón y en tu mente. Muchas veces se quedan sorprendidos porque ¿cómo plantas un árbol en el corazón y en la mente de un ser humano? Bueno, tú eres un ave, tú eres ponte en esa especie que es transmisora de esas semillas. Entonces, hemos tenido la dicha y la oportunidad de por lo menos también construir y traer chicos de muchas partes que hoy están desarrollando proyectos, sus iniciativas también en sus países, ¿no? En Europa, en el norte, en el sur, en muchas partes del mundo, que se fueron con un sueño. Entonces, creo que esa parte transmitimos la parte nuestra, la parte cultural, pero que no es nada del otro mundo, ¿no? Es algo tan sencillo, es algo que muchas veces nos lo complicamos con bonitas palabras o palabras tan grandes que muchas veces no las entendemos, sino hacerlo desde la parte más sensible, más práctica. Hoy, a razón de todo esto y a razón del turismo, estoy dando un tour que es sobre baño de bosque y terapia de bosque, donde la persona que nos visita puede también sentir y recibir sanidad de sus enfermedades, de sus estreses, de su día a día, de esas cosas que muchas veces vamos cargados de cosas y que muchas veces nos hacen sentir culpables. Entonces, ¿cómo también el bosque contribuye y cómo también el turismo puede también contribuir en gran escala a estas cosas? Digamos, yo creo que es un poco lo que te podría hablar de esa interacción que realmente podemos hacer, de esa parte social, de esa parte también cultural nuestra, transmitiendo, porque estos temas son tan grandes, pero son tan lindos y tan bonitos, pero hay que hacerlos prácticos y no es comprometiendo a otros, sino haciéndole también parte de eso y que esta persona lo sienta. Yo tuve la oportunidad de trabajar el año pasado con chicos de Inglaterra y sacarles una sonrisa a un chico de 15 a 16 años y ver chispear sus ojos de como ese despertar, porque hoy están pegados a un celular y yo les decía, ¿te has dado cuenta cuánto cuesta un celular? ¿De dónde se extraen muchísimos materiales y cuántos pueblos están sufriendo por extraer una batería para el carbón de un celular? Es enorme, pero hay que pensarlo. Y este celular termina de funcionar y va a la basura a hacer una gran contaminación. Busquémosla como herramienta, no como algo que está de moda, ¿no? Ahí un poquito de mi interpretación sobre esto.
Thank you, Paulino. Thank you so much for that insight. I really enjoyed the parts about the making less is more. The words, there are a lot of words that we use as human beings that are not necessary. Nature as it is communicates a lot without words, and those concepts can be found within nature without us hearing words from nature. And that education piece with children and preparing the next generation and sharing knowledge with the next generation so they can take their own lives and that of their communities in their own hands and do something about it. It's so important. And that leads us really to the next question, which is about storytelling and education. So thank you, Paulino, for setting us up for that next question. We only have 10 minutes left in this webinar, so we have 2 questions left. So I'm going to go to Mangana first. Mangana, I'm going to ask you a question about storytelling and education relating to the younger generations. So how important is storytelling and passing down traditional knowledge in your community's efforts to raise awareness about climate change in younger generations? And are there any stories or lessons you can share with us about that?
Hello, though I didn't get the last part of your statement.
So the question that I'm asking you is about the importance of storytelling in passing down traditional knowledge in your community's efforts to raise awareness about climate change in younger generations. So how important is storytelling for that? And if you could give us some examples of stories that you share with children to pass the knowledge about how to adapt and be more resilient to climate change.
Storytelling is part of our life because we are a society which is so closed. We normally have sessions where we in our evening we normally sit around fire, and that's where normally elderly people will have to tell us about the past, because it's in most of our history we get it oral from them, and we respect the storytelling, and because it's part of our tradition. And as you can hear me speaking, what I'm saying is not something which is documented. It's something that I have experienced. It's something that I have, part of it, I have lived it. And it's something that part of it, I have heard it from my elders when they were sitting around the fire. And there are occasions where they will tell you, during winter, there are lots of wildfires, and they normally do this because they are saying as the smoke is going up, it brings down the clouds so that there should be rain very soon than being late. And it's also bring up new vegetation, and it's also open up the maybe the bush to be so when it's rainy, it's look new, and they said it's also giving space for the generating plants to breathe, and you know, there are also stories that they can share with us about playing with fire. Playing with fire will maybe bring, they will tell you about the evil spirit, but it's not something about evil spirit. It's you will create something danger because you will burn the world unnecessarily when it's not time for the world to be burned, because they know when that should be, and normally it's like I said, it's during winter. They will not do that practice during summer because they know already the vegetation has started to back to life. And the storytelling part of, again, when it comes to conservation is part of, because when you debush a tree during summer, for it to degenerate, it is going to maybe too slow than being during winter. So that's when even when they are getting fruits, they will say, no, don't get that branch from the tree because it's still growing. So and it's getting water. So when you do that, it will die automatically. And storytelling, it's a most respected part of our culture, because sometimes even in modern life, we think there are more evil things which are happening during night. So storytelling is normally during night to keep youth or to keep young generations around so that they can have lessons. And I think if we can combine these challenges, climate change challenges, in a way it's combined with our traditional way of educating, then it will work for us better than maybe in platforms like workshops where very few will come and others will decide to stay away, and some will not be comfortable to stand up and give out what they think should be done than being in a sharing part of it, in a storytelling part. And I think that will be the most productive part of it. And as I was saying about the policies, if that part of, because it's part of our tradition, and the formatting of the policies, if have look into this cultural part of people, including indigenous people, because when it comes to traditional knowledge, it's more like we are richer than the other people, because we are so close to the nature and we have been surviving with in the nature, and we have not been destroying the nature. That means we have something different that can be used to help, and even those who said we were a problem to nature. I remember one of my colleagues who was saying, you are saying we are a threat to nature, but you find us with the nature, and you are your problem. You are the threat of the nature, because during our time we were staying with animals and drinking water in the same pond. So now that's not something which is not happening, and I think the strategies can be channeled through the traditional way of understanding. That can help.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mangana. That's very, and one thing that came to mind is some of the most powerful and impactful decisions and concepts have been shared through storytelling to make them more understandable and more relevant to the wider number of people possible. And storytelling is super important, and we should be using that in responding to climate change. We have 2 minutes left in our 2-hour session. So the last question is one of hope, I hope. And that goes to John Barrett. I'd like to ask you a question around future generations and aspirations. So looking ahead, what vision does your community have for the future in relation to climate change and the environment? And what legacy do you hope to leave for the coming generations?
That's a great question, Thomas. And look, my answer to that question is one that our people have been talking around and trying to implement prior to the impacts of climate change coming along. And that statement that we try to live by is one, a traditional responsibility of kaitiakitanga, or a responsibility to ensure that we are handing over the world, the new world, the future to our younger generations in a better condition than when we came into it. Well, it's easy to say, not so easy to do. But what we really want, and I'm talking for our family, for our tribal group, we want a planet that is safe and secure, and supporting our communities, our cultures, and our people. And we want to be able to do that, living our culture, and also be citizens of the world at the same time. And that's where we think the future is. We see huge value in honouring our culture and the learnings from our old people, and also adapting and adopting the new technologies where we think they're appropriate. So it's a bit of a mixed message, but that's how we see it here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. But essentially, too, the world needs to contribute to slowing down this climate change issue. Everybody needs to contribute to it.
Thank you, John. Right. Thank you so much to all of the panelists, and thank you, John, for those closing remarks. I'm going to pass it on to Evie for the closing of this webinar, but I'd like to thank everyone who's remained with us, and those that could only stay for a shorter amount of time. And I want to thank you so much for your time. I know that it's precious these days, and also for your interest in this so important topic about Indigenous communities and climate change. So Evie, over to you.
Thank you so much, Tom. And thank you so much, everyone. I see we are over the time. I'd love to give a special thank you, a very big thank you to our panelists today. We really learned so much. I know for myself, I have so much I've learned today. I have so much to think about, so much more work to be done. And thank you all for your leadership, particularly in climate change, through your culture, through your storytelling, through everything that we have learned today. We truly, truly appreciate you joining us. And as we close off, I know there are some questions that had come into the chat box. We will follow up with our panelists via after this call. And if we do have any answers, we'll be sure to share them in our newsletter or in our one-on-one catch-ups with our community partners. But thank you so much to everybody. We are so excited. We're so grateful to have had you with us today. If you have any questions and you're part of the Global Community Tourism Network, please feel free to reach out to your Planetarra representative. And if you've joined us today as a Planetarra supporter, please again feel free to ask us questions in our inbox, info@planetarra.org. And also, please feel free to be looking out for our newsletter. If you're not subscribed already, you can subscribe on our website, and you can get more information and more updates and a chance to participate in more of such webinars and such information sessions. And once again, thank you very much to everybody who has joined us, especially our panelists. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I can't express how grateful we are as part of the Global Community Tourism Network that you took the time out of your precious days to come and share with us, and we could learn from you. From me at Planetarra and everyone and the rest of the team, thank you so much. We are looking forward to seeing you again soon. Please keep an eye on your inboxes. We'll be having more and more of such amazing sessions where we can all learn together and we can all hear from our amazing communities all over the world. Thanks, everyone, and have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.